Hey everybody, this is Chris Sussman, otherwise known as the Barbecue Buddha. And today we're going to talk about Boston butt or pork shoulder. It's called a butt, but it's also the shoulder of the animal. It isn't from the rear of the animal. The butt is just a colloquialism, I guess. It's the butt end of the shoulder blade of the animal. This is one of the easiest things to first start barbecuing. The biggest thing you need is patience and time. We're gonna go over how I prep the pork, how I get it ready for the smoker. We're gonna wrap it up. We're gonna see how I set up my big green egg for this low and slow cook. And then we're gonna follow along until we get beautiful pulled pork sandwiches at the end of this. In addition, I am also going to do a little bit of an experiment this time around. We have two pork shoulders, two pork butts here. And so one, I'm gonna cook the entire time without wrapping, without the Texas crutch. The other one, I'm going to wrap, and we're gonna compare it together and see which one of these techniques makes a difference, if they make a difference at all. All right, so the anatomy of a pork shoulder is pretty straightforward. It's a big hunk of muscle meat. You've got the fat cap on one side, and you have a bone. You can feel the bone pretty much protruding out of the top quarter of the shoulder. What I like to do when I prep my butts is simple. What I want to do is I want to cross hatch the fat cap. Cross hatching is just putting knife cuts in diagonals across the top of the fat. Do that to both of these. You don't want to go all the way down. You don't want to cut into the meat. You just want to cut right through that fat and bring the cut line straight down to the meat, because it's very important. If you take a look, what this is going to do now is when I apply the rub's going to be able to get down there into the meat, so you'll be flavoring the meat. And also this cross hatch cut, as the fat starts to render in the long cook, it'll render faster because it's not one contiguous piece of fat. So that's a little tip for you, just cross hatch the top, and that's it. Some people like to really trim it up. Think about how you're gonna be serving the barbecue afterwards. If you don't want a lot of fat in your final product, then trim up a lot of this extra fat. I love to leave it on. As always, I like to do a mustard slather, just yellow mustard. And just apply just a teeny bit to each butt. Next thing we're gonna do, I have a homemade rub, pork rub. It's equal parts kosher salt, black pepper, and paprika. So again, this is Texas style. I'll use a little bit of apple juice in my mop or my mist when I start to smoke these things later. That will give a little bit, just enough sugar to help the bark formation, but I really love this seasoning blend. It's all you really need to make pork sing. So I'm gonna wrap these things up, and then tomorrow we're gonna get them on the big green egg low and slow. That's it. The next day I light the big green egg up right in the middle. Now it's time to set up the Egg Genius. Put your pit probe in place, close the top lid, and then close the vent 90%. We've got the big green egg all set up and ready to go. The Egg Genius is stabilizing the temperature. We've got some apple wood for the smoke in there, and it's time to put in these beautiful Boston butts. First thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put in a meat probe into one of the butts. What you wanna do is you wanna find where the bone is. The bone's right here in the upper right-hand corner, and you want to put it in the opposite end. You don't want the probe to hit the bone at all. You want it all to get meat. So I'm going to slide that in. That's going to monitor and measure the temperature of this Boston butt as it cooks. Now we're gonna open up the big green egg, we're gonna get these butts on and let her roll. Hey everybody, I'm back. Now, the pork has been cooking about 3 hours, and as soon as the 3 hour mark is up, we are going to start spraying those pork shoulders with a homemade mist or a spray. Some people call it a mop. You could use a mop. I like to use a sprayer. It's easier to get coverage over a big cut of meat like that. So we're gonna use a spray, the Barbecue Buddha spray. Let's fill this up. So the first thing I do is I want a majority of this apple juice. I didn't use any sugar in the rub, so I want a little bit of that sugar from the apple juice on top of the bark to help the caramelization and the Maillard reaction as we continue to cook this pork. So I'm gonna fill this up with apple juice. Now the next thing, you want to add about the half of that amount, so a half a cup of apple cider vinegar. You want a little bit of that tartness inside of your mop or your rub or whatever we're calling this, the spray, because you want to add a little bit of that acidity to your crust as well. Now here for some Barbecue Buddha magic, we are going to add a dash, 2 or 3 of hot sauce. This is habanero hot sauce. Just adds a little bit of complexity to the mop or the spray that we're going to be laying on the bark. And then you can't get away without using Worcestershire sauce. So I'm going to do a couple of dashes of that. Now I'll give this a quick mix. And that's it. That is the spray that I'm going to be applying to these pork butts for the next 5 hours. So here's my spray bottle. Put on the top, we're good to go. This is the Barbecue Buddha's pork mop, spray, whatever you want to call it. We are gonna be squirting this all over our butts all day long. Are you with me, people? Let's make this happen. Hey everybody, it has been 8 hours and we're gonna take one of these pork butts off and we're gonna bring it inside and we're gonna wrap it. We're gonna leave the other pork butt on and we are going to leave it there and we're gonna test to see which one came out better or worse or if there was no difference. So remember, we're doing a this or that. We're wrapping one, we're not wrapping other. The pork butts have broke stall, which means the internal temperature of the pork butts is rising again. And so we've got a nice bark formation. We're gonna take these babies off and we are going to wrap one and see what happens. What's the difference? So come along. Ooh, look at those pork butts. All right. We're gonna get this one inside. We're gonna wrap her up. Check back in a few minutes. All right, so we've taken one of the Boston butts off of the big green egg. We left the other one on. We're gonna wrap this one because the common debate is wrap or no wrap. It's called the Texas Crutch. It's supposed to capture the steam of the meat while it's cooking and put it back on itself so it helps tenderize the meat, but mostly it speeds up the cook. Still not quite tender, but look at that bark. Look at that beautiful color that's forming on the outside of that gorgeous hunk of pork. Nice smoky aroma coming off. The bark looks good. We're gonna wrap this thing up. Take a little bit of this spray that I've been spraying on and now we're just gonna mop it just to give a little extra moisture inside that. Some people like to do honey, some people like to do butter. I don't like to do any of that stuff. I like to let the smoke and the natural flavors that I've rubbed onto this throughout the cook speak for itself. That's it. We wrapped one butt, the other butt is not wrapped, and we're gonna go put this back onto the big green egg. All right, everybody, it's been 10 hours and the pork butts are done. They're measuring at about 203, 204 degrees. Both the butts are done at the same time. So far, wrapping it versus not wrapping it has had no difference to the end temperature. They both finished the same time. All right, everybody, it's been 10 hours. We've smoked 2 pork butts. They're right here side by side. One has been unwrapped and one has been wrapped. So let's take a look at the unwrapped one versus the wrapped one. So the first thing that I found out, and again, this is one small test, the very first thing I found out is wrapping it did not speed up the cook time versus unwrapped. They both came off. They're both probe tender. They both came off at about 204 degrees. So let's take a look if the bark looks any different. First of all, that looks way more juicy. You can see right there that the meat just looks juicy and wet and ready to go. So let's pull the rest of this aluminum foil off. And we'll pour that reserved pork juice right on top of both butts. So next thing you want to do is, we've got these 2 butts. Look at them, they look pretty much identical. This one definitely looks a lot more juicy just because of the steam and everything. You can even see all the steam come up here. All this bark right here though looks dark and delicious. So if you were serving this like a brisket, I'd almost say that this one wins because the bark just looks so much more meteor-like. It's well formed, just looks beautiful. This one looks beautiful too, but there's some where the moisture in the steam sort of took some of the bark off. But this is pulled pork. This is all just gonna be mushed into each other. So bark matters, but it doesn't matter that much. So let's do the bone pull test. That's what you wanna see. That bone came right out, no resistance, and almost no meat on there except for that little bit. Now there's no meat on there. All right, let's try the unwrapped one. All right, so a little bit of a difference. It didn't pull right out. Huh, all right. Maybe the A/B test did tell me something. So the pork is still super tender, but you can see the meat is clinging to the bone. So I'm gonna pull that meat off of there. So there, I'd say just on first pass with the bone test, that the wrapping does its job. It makes it slightly, if not substantially more tender. Even though both of these probed easy, like butter, you could see with that bone test, wrapping is the way to go. So this or that, I'd say that, assuming that wrapping was that. All right, I don't know about you, but look at that smoke ring. Look at all that color. It's tender, pulls nicely, delicious bark, beautiful bark. This is amazing. All right, everybody, I've got a nice soft brioche bun, some of the Barbecue Buddha's classic Southern coleslaw. It's delicious, and I have some pulled pork right here. I'm gonna get this wonderful coleslaw, put that on top. That's how I like my sandwich, my pulled pork sandwich. That's a classic right there. Let's get a bite. As you can see from that bite, this was amazing. I probably have stuff still all over my face. The smokiness from the hickory and the applewood chunks inside the Big Green Egg lump charcoal, the slow smoky flavor all day long of that crust with the black pepper and the salt and paprika, and finally my homemade coleslaw that gives it a little bit of pop with the acidity and the creaminess from the mayonnaise. This is some really good barbecue, people. You could be the king of your backyard barbecue by following this recipe. And let me tell you, you should wrap your pork butt. So until the next time, if you like this video, want to see more, please hit subscribe, send me a note, leave me a comment, and also let me know what you want to see. I'm going to drop a video at least once a week. So until we eat again, have a great day or night.